Let us begin today, friends, with certain important ideas that I. Richards is discussing in the two uses of language. As in the earlier lecture, we have seen that what exactly is the use of language and how he has pointed out about that particular use of language with scientific use. And he has made a comment that scientific use of language where the statement may be used for the sake of reference, true or false, which it causes. And the same can be used for the sake of the effects in emotions and attitude produced by the references in it occasions. And this is what he calls as emotive use of language. And furthermore, Richards tried to bring differences between the mental processes involved in the two cases. And he says that the failure also he discussed of the two uses of language. He mentioned that for scientific language, a difference in references is itself to be considered as failure, and the end result has not been attained. In that case, we can say that scientific language is failed. Whereas emotive language, it doesn't require any sort of references, proper references. If there are widest range, widest difference of references, there are widest difference in references. It is of less importance, but it has to attain the effect in attitude and emotion. And if it is not attaining the effect in attitude and emotion, then we can say that emotive language is failed in that particular case. Furthermore, Richards discussing about the scientific use of language and pointing out that the success of scientific use of language does not rely only on the correctness of references, but there should be connections and relations of references to one another, and that he said should be called as logical. There should be a logical relationship between the references. Otherwise, the references, it is fall out of science. And then even we have discussed that how he pointed out about the language, how scientific language should be organized with references, because the logical connection of references should have some sort of relationship with each other in the further references. It should not impede further references. But for any emotive purposes, logical arrangement is not necessary. If the logical references are there, then it is supposed to be an obstacle or hindrance in emotive use of language. And Richards even pointed out that references should have their own proper organization in emotive use of language also, but their own emotional interconnection is required. In emotive use of language, references have not even dependence upon any sort of logical relations, any sort of logical understanding. This is what we have discussed about the uses of language. Now, furthermore, Richards is talking about, is trying to talk about a word called truth. And he has given few notes. In the essay, he mentioned that I'm giving certain few notes of the chief uses of the word truth in criticism, and it may help to prevent misunderstanding. This is what he claimed for using the word truth. Now, very interestingly, the person who is psychologist, who is critique, who developed a new branch called new criticism, pointing out about the use of two languages, he discussed about the scientific use of language and emotive use of language. He tried to enter into the area close to neurology, not completely as neurology. He's reaching up to the mark of medicine in analyzing the mental process that usually takes place when references are formed. The man who discussed how the references are formed, how impulses and stimuli passing through sensory nerves reaches to the mind, and how references has been collected and stored, and what conscious mind, what unconscious mind used to do with all those things. This man who is discussing the two uses of language so thoroughly, what makes him immediately to jump over only single word called truth? And why this word truth is being discussed so meticulously in the essay, whether this word truth is having any relevance to the two uses of language, whether the truth is having any relevance to understand its role in criticism, why this word truth is being discussed, and in a statement at the beginning of few notes he has given about truth, he mentioned that I'm giving a few notes of the chief uses of the word truth in criticism. What is the chief use? Where it is being used? Chief uses of the word truth. What are the chief uses of the word truth? If you are using its scientific language, you are saying that it is a scientific truth. And when you are using it emotive language, you are saying it is used as poetic truth. Now, please understand, there is a very interesting meaning of the word truth. We need to understand the meaning of the word truth. What is the meaning of the word truth? If you see the meaning of the word truth, you will find out it has got various definitions in it. There are various definitions of truth. You will find out a very simple history of 13 lakh Indian soldiers. We have to see it very carefully that this small understanding of truth, that what is meaning of truth? If you go and open the dictionary, you will find out there are truth as used as a noun. There are various definitions of truth: the body of real things, events, and fact, or the state of being the case, or if it is capitalized, it is a transcendent, fundamental, or you can say spiritual reality. It can be used as a judgment, proposition, or idea, or the body of true statements and propositions, the property of being in accord with fact or reality. Even it is said that fidelity to an original or to a standard, or there's a third meaning where you can say sincerity in action or character, or in Christian sense, it is called as a God. Now, if you see the meaning of this word, as I have given to you all these three different meanings of the word, you will find out everywhere it is to be said that it is somehow the body of true statements of proposition. It is body of real things, events, and facts. It is the state of being the case. It is a judgment. It is a proposition. It is an idea. Now, if you see all these meanings of the word truth, you will find out, my friends, what I, Richards, is interested in discussing with this. And then he is saying that I'm giving the notes on truth because it may help to prevent misunderstanding. What are the misunderstandings regarding to the word truth? This thing we have to find it out at first, then we can able to move for the notes that he discussed about. Now, when we use the word truth, a very common misunderstanding is it is related with fact. It is fact. It is a reality. Now, if you are talking about reality, if you are talking about fact about these things, or the word meaning of this word truth, when you utter a word truth, you find out certain connotations of it. Now, if this truth word attaches to science, it is going to be a scientific truth. If it is attaches with emotive use of language, it is going to be called as a poetic truth. Then there is again the possibility that we have discussed a minute before, that when you are saying it is a scientific use, then you have to have a references with the logical interconnections with each other, which are not impeding on the further references. That is called as scientific truth. Collection of references with a logical interconnectivity with each other. And if I'm applying it with emotive use of language, then there is no chance of logic to be applied to it. Then what about the understanding of fact and reality? And this is what usual case of misunderstanding used to take place, because in scientific sense, if you use the word called truth and if you are saying it is a scientific truth, then there is a clear cut idea about it, because scientific use of language is having a sort of logical interconnection with the references, and these references furthermore having its own space, its own understanding. It is not impeding upon the further references, so it is very clear cut that we are able to understand the thing because it is having a logical connection with it. But when I'm saying it's a poetic truth, then poetic truth, there is no logical connection in emotive use of language, and when there is no logical arrangements, no logical connection is there in emotive use of language, then what exactly, how will you treat truth there? Because truth is the meaning of the truth, as I have said you, the different three meanings, where each and every meaning reaches to one common understanding, that it is talking about fact and reality. If it's a emotive use of language, how fact and reality will work there? Because emotive use of language is related with fiction, and fiction is an imaginative use. So there is a sort of possibility of misunderstanding in this case. And when there is possibility of misunderstanding, I. Richards very immediately realized this misunderstanding and tried it that he should give certain explanation regarding to the truth. And if he explains what exactly means by truth in scientific sense, in emotive sense, then it will be easy for most of us to understand what exactly truth is working there in both the uses of language. Because when you're using it as a part of language, when you're using it as an important use of language, then it is very much important for us to understand the meaning of that word he is using there, because every language is trying to reach to a particular idea, concept, whether it is imaginative, whether it is in reality, it is trying to reach there. And that's why everything reaches to truth, everything with the help of truth reaches to this particular conclusion, particular aim at the end of it. And that is why I. Richards is trying to bring out what exactly is the chief use of the word truth in criticism. How will you use it in criticism? Now, he has given 3 points, and we'll discuss first point today, what Richards talked about. Tomorrow we will discuss second point, and the day after tomorrow we'll speak the third point, and we'll conclude with that essay. Now, the first point I. Richards is making about the chief uses of the word truth in criticism. The first point is that the scientific sense, where all the references or derivative statements which are symbolizing this references, all these things are true in nature. Because references, how references are formed, we have discussed it earlier. How references are part of our understanding, we have discussed it earlier. Even we come to know that there is a complete logical base for understanding of references, how those references are stored, how those references are created, how it reaches, and how it helps to develop your understanding, and how it helps to understand and helps us to follow certain uses of language out of it. So we know that references are the most important part in understanding scientific sense. All these references or derivative statements which are symbolizing references are true. And here we need not delay us. We need not to find out any delay in understanding the meaning of the word truth here, because everything is crystal clear in front of us with the help of references, with the help of facts, with the help of derivative statements which are symbolizing towards the references. So everything is clear here in this case. And that's why we can say that yes, the scientific sense and the truth, the word truth used in the scientific sense is almost uh, having a proper use as its meaning suggests. So we need not to delay in understanding this. But which reference is supposed to accept it as true? Not all the references which are passing through sensory nerves, the impulses which are or stimuli which is passing through the sensory nerves to the mind is trying to collect the references in the conscious and unconscious mind. Which references are supposed to be the true references? And Richards pointed out that a reference is true when the things which it refers are actually together in the way in which it refers to them. What is true? That the things which it is referring, the things which he is pointing, the things which is simply pointing out that okay, this is what is called as a spec. Now the thing to which it refers is actually there, and the word and the thing, when it comes close to each other, reaches to its ultimate conclusion that yes, what the word suggests and what the thing is, both the things are suitable. Please remember once again what we discussed in the first semester when we talked about deconstruction, and we talked about sign and signifier, signifier and signified, because this discussion that further developed up to this particular ideas in criticism. So reference is true when the things to which it refers are actually together in the way in which it refers to them. Otherwise, it is false. If it is not referring to the exact thing that what it aims at, then this thing is not true. This is not truth. Now, this sense is very little involved by any other art. Now you may say, sir, how it is? How it is involved it with limited number of arts. Now please, once again, I'll go back to what reference is true. Because what we say in scientific sense, references, derivative statements symbolizing references are true, then we have to accept it that it is truth. Now, which references are true? Those references are true which it refers are actually together in the way in which it refers to them. This is what a reference, true reference. This is possible only in scientific sense. This is not applicable to, it is very little involved in by any by any other art, by any of the arts. Why? If I am applying it, if I'm trying to use this reference in fiction, what is, if I say, what is the use of broom? Broom. Naturally, we will use to say that okay, broom is to clean the floor, is to sweep the floor. Now, this is what its true meaning. It is true where it reaches to. But if this broom is used as a mode of transportation, as it is used in fairy tales, then it is not related to its what you call it as a true meaning. You call it as a true. No, because it is not sweeping right now. It is working as a mode of transportation for witches in most of the fairy tales. In the series of Harry Potter used to move on these brooms. Now, this idea of scientific truth is having its own restrictions. We cannot say that these scientific truths are can be used in all the senses, in all the way. No, it is not possible in any other art. If you're looking at a painting, and if a painter is drawing any sort of painting, the thing which he refers to need not to have its actual relation with the things other in front of you. So this sense is very little involved by any of the arts. It is only applied to scientific truth. Now, for avoidance of confusions, it will be good if we term true, this could be reserved for this use only. Reserved for the scientific use, the reference, true reference, which we called right now. We will restrict this term for the sake of avoiding confusion. Now, if you see very carefully, my friends, in pure scientific discourse, in pure scientific discourse, it could be and it should be. But you will find out such discourse is uncommon. You will not find such discourses available because true is related with scientific terms and things only. Truth or true is not at all related with any other art. It is very little involved for any of the arts. That's why in scientific discourse, you will find out it could be and it should be part of the scientific discourse. Otherwise, it should not be called as a scientific discourse. But such discourses, but such discourse is very uncommon, where you will find out true is not there. True is always there in all the scientific discourses. Now, if you put it to the use of emotive power, and if he attaches emotive power to the word, it is not at all part of general discussions also because it is abandoned from general discussion. That you cannot say that true is simply related with emotive power. It is not in discussion even. It is part of scientific discourse. But it is not at all having any sort of relation, any sort of discussion, even in discussion. It is abandoned from general discussion. The use of the word true in emotive power. Why? Why this emotive power, which attaches to the word, is far too great for it to be abandoned from the general discussion. Now, the temptation to a speaker who needs to steer certain emotions and evoke certain attitudes of approval and acceptance is overwhelming because it is not possible if you want to evoke certain emotions, if you want to steer certain emotions or try to have certain attitudes of approval and acceptance, in this case, the use of true is not that much suitable. So, you will find out it is not part of the discussion. It is simply Overwhelming. The word is overwhelmed. It is used again and again to do all those things. But when they're using it, are they using it in its real sense? They're not using it in a real sense. As I said to you, that if we take if we take an example of Oedipus once again, how will you use the word true to the sort of punishment that that Sophocles has given to Oedipus? It will stir the emotions. It will evoke, but it is not actually true. A very common thing that used to have a question when generally we used to I used to watch a movie, that death is true, but the character dies in the film, and again in the next show he once again starts his life from the beginning. Now, how will you apply it to the truth? You come to an end to a novel, again open the first page, you find it out that the character is once again alive and started to talk about his life from the beginning once again. Is it possible in real life? Is it possible that you die today and from the tomorrow onwards somebody open the page and you start to live from once again from that first page? No, it is not true. But it is overwhelming. You will accept it as true. You take it into consideration as it is true. Death of an act. And that's why I said in the earlier lectures also of mine that if you try to read and understand a very interesting play written by Luigi Pirandello, an Italian playwright, Six Characters in Search of an Author. Characters are immortal. Characters in any form of art, whether it is painting, whether it is music, whether it is dance, whether it is theatre, whether it is drama, whether it is film. And that's why you will find out in Keats' Grecian urn, Ode to Grecian urn, the pictures painted in the Grecian urn never gets old, the lover never gets old that is painted on Grecian urn. And that's why I said these are the mortal, immortal things. So how will you apply the sense of truth and true to it? Because true is related to the thing which it refers to. And that's why you cannot apply it as in its real sense when we are applying it for emotive use of language. It can steer, it can say that, okay, this is the true condition. What Oedipus did is true. What Keats is talking about the Grecian urn is true. But the understanding of the word true changes here. It will not remain the same when it is applied to a scientific discourse. And that's why in scientific discourse, which is almost the true, we have to understand it that a purely scientific discourse should be and could be carry the sense of true in a true way with it, but not with the emotive use. Because Richards is mentioning, no matter how various senses in which it may be used, and even when it is been used in no sense, whatever it may be, its effect in promoting attitudes will still make it indispensable. This is what I mentioned it. That what its ultimate aim is to evoke emotions. Ultimate aim is to have approval to certain attitudes. Now, if please understand this is little bit complex. The thing which is written in the imaginative use, written in fiction, written in emotive use of language, cannot be said true in scientific sense, but it is indispensable part of the form of art if it reaches to its ultimate aim, if it reaches to its ultimate conclusion. The true is different in this sense. The true is very different understanding in this sense, because it will try to bring out the understanding and the idea in the form where it has to. What Oedipus did is not false, it is true. But if I apply this true to the real sense as it is found in scientific application, then the whole concept of true is shattered. And that's why the idea of true in emotive use of language, how various senses it may be used, there's no problem in it. There's no matter that how it is been used. There is no restrictions as compared to scientific discourse, as compared to scientific truth. There is no restriction. And it is used in a nonsensical way. Sometimes we feel it is nonsense, how it has been possible, but it is possible in the fictional world. If you see, some miracles used to take place in fictional world, and you can say it is not possible in real world, but it is true to that particular emotion. It is true to that particular condition. And that's why whether it seems to be nonsense, whether it seems to be having no proper sense, whatever it may be, But if it is giving a sort of response that is expected of it, if a tragedy is giving its response as it is expected to give, if a comedy is giving its response as it is expected to give, as a poem is reaching to the audience and creating a sort of impact over them, then the use of the true in it is correct. Because without truth, nothing is explained. What ultimately we reached, what ultimately we used to reach. We used to find the truth. The idea of truth that I said you when I'm defining it, when I'm saying its definition, the idea of truth is having those things that how it is actual, how it is in accord with fact or reality. We are trying to find it out, and that's why Richards is trying to mention that people will still continue to use the word with the same promiscuity as ever. What is the meaning of the word truth? What is the meaning of the word true? It will never change, my friends. Whether it is applied to science or whether it is applied to emotive use of language. You can have a clear-cut relationship, or you can keep that thing as it is when you are talking about a scientific use of language, because in scientific use you will have all the senses, all the things applied as it is to it. But to the emotive use of language, you will find out when you are applying it, when you are using it to the emotive use of language, you will find out, my friends, that this emotive use of language, what people will understand the meaning of the word true, they will apply that same meaning to the thing which is trying to reach to the evocation. They are trying to reach to that particular understanding. And that's why the meaning of the true, which is applied to scientific discourse, may have some different understanding. And when it is applied to emotive use of language, it has got its own understanding, but the meaning of the word will never change. The meaning of the word will never change. This is what the first note that Richards is trying to bring in front of us with the word truth, to avoid misunderstanding of that particular. Because usually what happens, when you are saying true, you apply definition to it, and when you apply it to the science and scientific truth, and when you apply it to poetic truth, you will find out the difference between them, and then you realize that there is a misunderstanding of the word used truth. And that's why Richards is trying to make it very clear to his readers, when you are applying it in criticism, the scientific truth is having its own understanding and poetic truth is having its own understanding. But the meaning of the word truth will remain same if it applies to science and if it applies to emotive use. But the use, when it is attached to science, it has got its own understanding, and when it is attached to emotive use of language or fiction use of language or poetic truth, then it has got its own understanding, and people will know it and people will use it in that sense throughout. You cannot change the understanding of the people, and that's what he's saying about the first note of truth, which Richards is trying to elaborate it. I think that this is a very simple, very clear cut understanding of the word truth, we can say. what he talks about the second aspect, what he talks about the meaning of the word truth in the second sense, and how he tried to elaborate it, how he tried to explain it. If you understand the first note of Richard's about truth, then it will be easy for us to move further for the second and third note, where he is trying to make certain important comments on the use of the word truth in criticism. So, tomorrow we are going to talk about the second aspect of truth in it.